Well, thank you for sticking around in this long afternoon. It's been a quite a interesting day for NIU and for autonomy to put this all together. And when we were organizing this, I really wanted to get all of the opinions of some of the sharing companies that are popping up all over Europe at the moment, and definitely those that have been in the game for quite some time. And wasn't quite sure if I would get the interest of all of the guys and ladies that were running these programs, because it's like putting them into a battle royale, into a boxing match on the same stage. And so what I decided to do today is basically bring up everyone who is one of the main actors throughout Europe right now to kind of get an idea and have an open discussion about what they're doing, where the future of sharing really goes, and how all the pieces in the puzzle will fit together in the very near future. So I guess I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to go directly to Bertrand here, who's the last to show up today, but gets the first question. Bertrand is from Cityscoot and here in Paris and elsewhere, but what do you think the next 6, 12, 24 months of sharing looks like for you and for the market at large?
Hi, everybody. Thanks. I was maybe the last to come, but I was the first one to sit. Well, definitely, I think it would be someone would have to be blind not to see that mobility is changing a lot in cities, especially in very big cities. I can envision from now that what is going to, the landscape of the urban centers will be very different from what it is today, and in 10 years it will be a lot more different again. I think that it's been now quite obvious, although the scooter has been in major cities for quite a long time, that electric scooter sharing will have a large, will occupy a large space in urban mobility in the next 12 to 24 months, and even more after that. We must not forget that the scooter is the best way from moving from one point to another. Everyone knows that. It doesn't take space. Electric scooter they do not pollute in cities. They can park, I mean, they take a fourth of what a car takes in terms of space for parking. And cities start to understand that. It's been like 2-3 years of really hard work to make them understand that it's probably, especially when it's been operated by private companies like all of us here, it was really difficult to understand why they took so long to understand that. So I'm sure that all of us here have a great future. We will be competing in most cities, most big cities, I think. But I think that the scooter sharing in big cities will be as common as the bicycle sharing is now in the very near future.
Okay, and tacking on to that, I'm going to point a question directly at Timo here from eCultura, which is, do you see it as programs that are going across multiple regions, or is it those that are going to specialize as operators in specific localities?
Yeah, I mean, the battlefield for us are cities, specific cities, no? So I think it's very important to have a major position in the cities where we go. So from our point of view, eCultura, the cities where we are, we really want to go in big. So currently we are in 5 cities. We are in Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon, Rome and Milan, and that's the city we will definitely fill up with scooters to get a high market share. I think, yes, you can see also on the typology of this panel, we have specialists in regions, no? I mean, for example, Cityscoot grabbed a large stake here in Paris, for example, no? And so that's definitely happening. adding on to what we'll see the next 12 to 24 months, I wanted to just share three things or three trends which I think. I think the local governments will get involved in some way or the other, because it's just at one moment when there's so many scooters or assets in the streets, they will come and start regulating and putting rules, which I think is interesting. And secondly, I think we will have a lot of more scooter sharing schemes. I've heard we are more than 30 different projects right now in Europe. So I think in the next years there will also happen consolidation. And basically on competition, I think we are far, far away from the optimal number of scooters. If you ask me, in a city like Madrid, how many sharing scooters there can potentially be.
Perfect.
Man, if we have a city like Madrid where we have 250,000 privately owned scooters, my dream is that they're going to replace by 40 to 50,000 shared electric scooters. And that means there is plenty of room for all of us. And the numbers where we are now with 1,000 scooters or 1,500 scooters, it's nothing.
Right.
Compared to where I see the potential.
Okay, so Alvaro, Timo mentions a little bit about Madrid, a city that you recently launched from. Why, is Madrid your point of launch? And you are in Madrid as well. And what is so interesting about that city as compared to any other, say, Spanish city or any other Southern Europe city?
Well, as you said, we just recently launched 2 months ago Mofo service, scooter sharing in Madrid. And actually our situation was a little bit different because we are a startup spin-off of Cabify. So Cabify has his headquarters in Madrid. So for us, a startup was a great idea to start a new business close to our financial company, or the company who was helping us out to deploy the new service. But it's true, Madrid actually has I don't know the numbers, the exact numbers, but probably there's 9-10 million trips per day moving from outside to inside Madrid, but also within the Madrid. I mean, Madrid is a city, it has what we call the M30, it's like the road that goes around the whole city. So we're calculating inside that area, it's about 50 square kilometers. There are about 8 million trips every single day. So that's a number that for us was okay, most of those trips are being made by privately owned car. So why we cannot help the city of Madrid to be smarter, more efficient, and also a better life for all the people who live in Madrid? Because, I mean, it's crazy having a lot of cars every single day coming into the city. Everybody stuck in traffic. So it has to be a better way to move. And Madrid has a problem about mobility and also about contamination. So
let me jump in here really quickly. Because Timo also pointed out, and Bertrand mentioned it as well, which is the need for government or government quasi-agencies to kind of get involved and give assistance, or to make a push to assist companies like you or anyone else that's sitting on this stage. How proactive is the Madrid city government right now?
Actually, probably Timo has more information about that because we just launched it. Yeah. But what we got from the government was we're really welcome on the city. I mean, they are really helping, not helping, but they are accepting the new mobility service in Madrid. Mm-hmm. But for sure, as he said, there is going to be a regulation soon coming up because, I mean, it has to be a way to regulate, but regulation does not mean forbidden or just not letting us operate in the city. Okay. It's more about helping us how to can operate in an efficient way. For instance, in Madrid, what we are facing right now is the parking space. Right. There is not enough public parking space in Madrid.
For both cars and for bikes and scooters, or is it everything?
Probably it's more on the scooters because Madrid never was a city where people was used to ride a scooter. Right. I mean, I come from Barcelona. Yeah. Barcelona, there are thousands of scooters, but Madrid, I think they are not used to ride the scooters. So there isn't the need for public parking space for scooters. So that
Perfect.
will help us to,
Got it.
to probably operate in a
So
better
that's a
way.
good segue because you talk about Barcelona and the density of scooters in Barcelona. So I'm going to switch it over to here. I'm going to hand over my mic in 1 second, which is Scoot, an American company, yeah, decides to come to Europe and get itself situated right in the middle of the mess of Europe that's happening right now. Why did you guys choose Barcelona over any other city that you could have gone into?
So we chose Barcelona for several reasons. So before choosing it, we were looking the European landscape. So we knew that we wanted to go from North America to Europe because the market is very different, like the amount of people that have a driving license for going by scooters, so on. So Barcelona was one of the good choices because of the density of the city, of the number of people that actually know how to ride scooters, because of the climate as well, and because it's one of the tech hubs in Europe, so this was a good reason to go. And as well because as an American company based in San Francisco and Barcelona, they are sister cities, so there are some agreements. So it was a good way to start the business, like from Barcelona as the European hub and then expanding elsewhere.
So I'm going to switch now to a much smaller city when it comes to two wheels, which is where John and Go Urban are hubbed. And you know, obviously, I could ask you why you started in Austria, in Vienna, but I think the answer is obvious. Is where you guys are from, right? What is it that, you know? Are there any kind of special learnings from a, you know, we have these cities that are very, very popular to ride scooters, and you're operating in a city where scooter riding is not so popular. What kind of learnings can we get from a city like Vienna that can then be applied elsewhere? Or do you think that electric scooters and sharing will actually increase adoption of driving two wheels versus four wheels or public transportation?
That's a very good question. Well, Vienna it's a wonderful city.
Lovely city.
But the reason is the geographical point of view is quite interesting because it's like a snake. And we said that you don't need so many vehicles to have the availability. And that was also a financial part in the beginning. Austria is a bit conservative ecosystem. It's not easy to find an investment. And that was one of the main reasons why we started in Austria, in Vienna.
You bring up an interesting part about like the actual geographic makeup of the city, right? So back to Paris, a city which is maybe one of the worst urban, sorry, I know there's someone in here from the mayor's office, but it's one of the worst planned cities for a very long time in history in terms of the ease of which of navigating the city there is. So how do you really help transform moving through this city, which is almost impossible to move through on four wheels? How are you guys transforming trips in the city of Paris for your users and riders?
Well, actually, I wouldn't say that Paris is not made for four wheels. It's just that there are too many four wheels in Paris.
Okay.
And the big problem is that most of cars are only occupied by one people. Okay. So I know that the city of, I mean, we talk a lot with the city of Paris, and we know that the city of Paris would do anything to discourage people to be alone in their car. And if they don't want to do that, then discourage people to own a car, okay? But if there were few cars, I mean, you can see in weekends or during holidays that it's quite a good city to travel, okay? People have chosen, you know, the scooter boom in Paris was around late 90s when cars started to like be too many in Paris. And then people, like in every city in the world, maybe less in the US, but started, because in the US you've got like large streets.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. People understood that the only way to swirl around cars and make their way through traffic was with scooters.
Do you think?
So I don't really agree with the assessment.
So maybe it was a bad assessment. Let me ask you a quick follow-on to it, which is in terms of the availability of your scooters in this marketplace. How effective are you in spreading out across all the districts of Paris, or are you really focusing in on highly trafficked small commutes in the center of Paris?
No,
City?
we don't focus, and actually we never rebalance our scooters. Our bet is that, and what we've said is that we're going to have about 3,500 scooters in Paris before the end of the year. And as it was said before, availability is the key. And the more scooters you have, the more each of one is being used. And what the promise we made is that there will be, in average, at least one scooter every 100 meters in Paris before the end of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. So this amount of scooters will enable us to also, as we already did in 4 suburban cities which are touching Paris,
yeah.
to extend our dropping zone to all of those cities which surround Paris, okay? Keeping the same density of scooter. Density is the key. Of course, to put so many scooters, it requires a lot of money and financing.
Of course.
Okay, so that might be sometimes a problem for a newcomer who wants to put a lot of scooters.
Yep.
We had the chance to raise over $65 million since the beginning.
Yep.
And so we can really go toward this ambition we made. Yeah.
Okay. So, Timo, one of the points that Bertrand brought up was in terms of kind of repurposing or moving scooters from one point where they get dropped to a new point where it's much more high frequency of use. In a city like Barcelona, which is very much set along the coastline, but a lot of people live up in the hills, and we all know that electric has a little bit of an issue sometimes into the hills. Is how are you regularly repurposing bikes, or what does your business model look like in terms of helping the scooters find a new home once a user drops it off somewhere?
Yes, it's actually also, we made the same experience like Bertrand. With the large fleet, the natural distribution is functioning very, very well. Nevertheless, we have some business rules, and it might happen that a scooter, for example, we have the business rule after 5 days has not been moved, then we send one of our swappers to dislocate the scooter and bring it to another spot. But it's not a structural problem that we are facing.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take it.
What is obviously happening is when you have certain events,
yeah, of course,
then you have conglomeration. No, for example, in Barcelona 2 weeks ago, there was the famous Sauna Festival,
yeah.
an amazing event for people going there, but not necessarily driving home.
Yeah.
No, so these are the moments. Yes, when
so what do you do when that happens? I mean, how do you handle something like that when a large majority of your bikes end up right next to the festival and need a new home?
Yes.
How do you manage it?
No, then it's actually very important to have a big operational team on the ground. No, and that's always something that, at least from our perspective, goes in our favor. No, I mean, as Cultra, we have been 12 years in the scooter business, so we have huge operational teams, also from our traditional business, that can help in these moments, not to relocate.
Or free rides back at the next day.
Exactly.
That always helps. Free rider, I guess, will always get someone to help you out for sure. There was a point about Bertrand. You mentioned how much capital you've raised to get to this point, which is a combination of, I would assume it's a bit of venture capital, a bit of institutional money, private money as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Everything. So when we look at this, I'm going to turn it over to Alvaro really quickly, which is, when we look at this space, in order to be able to build out your fleets, which is your most cost, is your biggest capex, right? Where does the smart money for sharing come from? Is it coming from VC, or is it coming from institutional? Is it coming from transportation, government? I mean, I'm asking you directly because of your certain ties. So kind of shed a little bit of light, if you can, on it. What are your thoughts as to where the best money comes from?
Okay, I mean, in that case, in our case, I mean, the money, as I said, it comes from Cabify. Cabify was already a mobility service that was providing ride-hailing, and now they want to turn a little bit or open the scope of the company to ride-sharing also. But actually, of course, what they say, I mean, if you want to grow the fleet, you need the money to pay the scooters.
Of course.
And what happens with the scooter probably is after several months, again, with just 2 months in life, so I don't have that data. But I mean, there's two big issues here. First, how to maintain the scooter and the vandalism, but at least what we have experienced in Madrid is not a small thing. And also another thing is what you do with the scooter, electric scooter after 2 years, for instance, the lifetime, because there's not a second market for that scooter yet.
Okay.
I mean, privately electric scooters that people is not buying electric scooters yet, so we cannot expect a second market after the lifetime for the scooter sharing. But I mean, again, we are not in that phase yet. We were lucky to raise enough money to go to up to 1,000 scooters in Madrid. So far we're good. We're always looking for new financing.
Okay.
But that's an adventure that we haven't get into.
Let me
yet.
turn the question, thank you for that answer. Let me turn the question to you, Timo, which is, what do you think about this in terms of where the smart money comes from? Because you come from a much more conservative background, right? Not an American like myself, or working for an American company like Mar, where VC is kind of like the only way we know how to raise money for growing companies. So, what are your thoughts on there? Is it more traditional, bank loans? Is it other types of capex investments, or what are your thoughts?
Well, many answers to this question. First of all, I think it's very smart not only to think about equity, but we have to convince basically financial institutions and banks that it is an asset class which could be debt financed. No, I mean nowadays, if you talk to departments of big banks about asset-backed financing, they're used to finance airplanes and ships.
Yeah.
So we go to them and we say, could you not finance a large scooter fleet, for example? So there, I think it's very good for us as entrepreneurs to find creative ways of not only going for equity.
Right.
And then going, in case you want to go for equity, I think it's very important to find the balance, because it's a long haul game. It's not going to be decided in the next 1 or 2 years. For us, it's a long-term strategy. So it's very important not to dilute too much at the beginning, because at one moment, if you dilute too much and you give away too much equity as entrepreneur, you're losing the fun of the game. So that's very important. So it's very important, and we in Kultra are on this trip, which is growth, yes, but we also look at profitability, because we believe it doesn't make sense only to put scooters and grow at a crazy speed. It's also very important at looking at the profitability, streamlining operations, because it's the basis to later scale up. You know, when you now, for example, we are now with 3,000 scooters, we're in a position, yes, we are working well, but we have to tweak certain things. We have to improve our application, we have to improve our telematics, etc. So this year for us is about improving all this, then for the next years to even be in a better position to scale up.
Okay. All right, that makes absolute sense. We go on for a long time about this conversation, so I'm going to kind of break it there, and I'm going to change the direction a little bit. And as you can see, we have 5 men on this stage, and 1 woman. We were supposed to have 1 other woman, but she couldn't make it this afternoon. But Moto is a male-dominated space, right? And it's lovely to see that we can try to change the way men and women think about riding electric scooters in cities. Is how do we use sharing to get more women onto scooters?
Okay, so I believe that this is true in some cities. In some other cities, it's not true that mobility, especially scooters, is more male-dominated, but it is definitely in San Francisco. Only 15% of the women ride a scooter in San Francisco. In Barcelona, is not the case. So Barcelona is a more female city in terms of scooters. But what it is important is that women work as well in the mobility sector, and there are many working. in several companies, not only in ours. Also, it is important that if it's a shared vehicle, you can always try it, use it, and then if you like it, then you feel comfortable with it, you keep trying again. It is important the type of vehicle. So in terms of size, for example, myself, I cannot drive any type of scooter. I ride scooters, but I'm not very tall, so therefore so the type of the vehicle also helps more women or less to drive. As well, the advertisement that you do. So it's not the same if you do more male advertisement oriented or female oriented. Always this encourage female riders to use it. So there are several ways to do. Also, a good way to encourage more women to drive, it would be to include more female employees in the fleet team and the mechanic team. This is where we have more issues to find females, because in the rest of the company it's like half-half, but in this specific department it is not true. It is not easy, but I think like it's more like type of vehicle, advertisement, and then the possibility to just rent once. One thing, like we in Barcelona, we are going to be multimodal. We will have scooters, but also e-bikes, and therefore many women start with e-bikes, and then it's easy for them, like if one day there is not a bicycle, okay, let's try a scooter. So I think this is also a good option.
So if I were to unpackage it, it's the combination of the marketing of reaching out to women to get them on the vehicles, and then also very equally important is actually having a vehicle that is rider-friendly for a woman, right? And most of the scooters that I see around in sharing or in most moto just buying B2C, they're not so female-friendly because they're heavier, they're bigger, or maybe they're just more powerful. So it's a combination of those two, and that's what's really going to change it. So for you guys up here, can you give me some numbers as to like what your rider base is for women? It'd be really interesting to see like what percentage of your riders are ladies? Just go around really quickly. Is it? Start over here, Timo.
For us, it's 20% female.
Okay.
15.
15.
80-20.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I would say 20-25% also.
20-25%. Okay, so basically everything under a quarter of all.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I think at the beginning, or the traditional way to drive a scooter, it's maybe not so for women, but the sharing now is this is an opportunity for everyone, and this is an alternative to the public transportation as well. And I think it's a question of time that also more women will drive scooter.
Okay. Timo, you have any thoughts there?
Definitely, we try also. I think it's very true what Ma said. We for example in Kultra we promote gender equality in terms of promoting and hiring female. It's very important. We also try to dedicate. I mean, all of us live off a customer acquisition in the internet, so it also depends on how you sell the product, no? On your Facebook ads, on your Instagram ads. I think that's very important. And especially lower the barriers to entry, no? Show videos. We do driving classes for people that have never driven a scooter before. Yeah. Things like this, I think, are very positive.
Okay, all right. Back to some data. Bertram, what does your fleet look like in any given day? How many rides per vehicle? What does it mean for profitability? How long are people riding on these scooters every single day? What's the distance, time? Give us a little bit of basics of like, what does Paris look like for City Scoot? Because you have, Paris is the most densely populated sharing scooter system in Europe right now. So give us a little bit of public data that you're allowed to talk about.
I will give you some, but not all of them.
That's okay. I had to ask.
Yeah, I will give you a few that I've already disclosed recently, okay? I'm more in the mood of giving less and less now, but of
That's
course, since you've invited me, I'm going to give you a few.
Okay. You can always disdain from saying anything. Okay.
Well, I've always, it's never changed, but the average ride in Paris is about 15 minutes for about 4 kilometers.
Okay.
And we at City Scoot do now almost 10,000 a day. So this is this is probably the only figures I'm gonna give you,
Okay.
but it gives you like a good idea if you can now that you've got those numbers.
That's
to
fine.
compute more.
Oh, that's perfect. That's
a lot of
good
things.
enough. That's more than good enough. Alvaro, I'll turn it over to you really quickly, which is, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in the urban environment that prevent successful implementation of projects? Is it the availability of scooter parking? Is it the robustness of larger streets versus smaller streets? Like, what are some of the things that prevent your growth just because the cities aren't designed perfectly for you?
Well, that's a tough question,
I
I
know.
guess. I mean, first of thing, what we have seen so far, the parking in Slaughter was something really that we're facing right now, because in the end you are offering a service to people, but I mean, for instance, for example, the other day, the police call us like, hey, there is a scooter parked in the middle of the park. Is this a place where you should park a scooter? It was like, no, probably not, but in the end it's the end user who parks the scooter. So there is a lot about educating. I don't know if the educating word is the right word there, but I mean, in the end, you cannot control everybody who uses your service. You try to provide the best services you can, but then it really relies on the user who takes that scooter to do a proper use of the scooter. So we have seen people driving, let's say, with some drinks. We have seen people parking anywhere, everywhere. So it has to be a lot of education that I'm not sure is our work, our task.
Let me ask you something. How many of your bikes get fines every single day for being parked in the wrong location?
Let's say about 2, 3, 5%. With the small fleet we have,
So 5% of the fleet
5% of the scooters every single day
getting a
got
fine.
fined.
How high are those fines?
And some of them are even tracked to the police
So
station.
how much does that cost in Madrid?
I mean, the truck thing is about $100,
Wow.
100 euros, sorry.
Yeah.
And the fines, it goes from 30 euros to 200 euros.
Okay.
And that's something we're facing that we were expecting to face, but
Of course.
actually it's kind of...
And do you pass that on to the rider?
Of sure, if we have the chance,
Yeah.
we always, because in the end, it's not our responsibility, it's the user, the end user who has the responsibility to park the scooter wherever it's
All right.
able or feasible to
I
park.
mean, I've spent a lot of time in Paris over the past several months, and more as it gets warmer, I see more and more tow trucks with 2 scooters sitting on the back of them. Is this becoming a problem for you guys, or is City Scoot user base relatively educated when it comes to parking the scooter in the right space?
You always get a percentage of your customer base which will never be educated enough to understand the lesson, and we have some clients who are regularly fined, but most of them, I mean, we've observed that of course our fleet gets bigger and our client base gets bigger, and we in time get more and more tickets, but in comparison to the size of the fleet, I would say that in percentage it goes lower, meaning that people are educated, get educated, and I mean, when you've paid like 3-4 times a fine, then you make sure that you're in the right parking spot, which is not that easy in Paris because there are about only 40 to 50,000 for 150,000 scooters. But it's, as Timo said earlier, cities are going to regulate that. And I know that they go toward, I mean, they're taking the direction of not punishing the sharing companies
As much, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
That's the right thing to do, is
that
it
they
not?
will make our life a lot better, actually.
Yeah.
Especially if it's electric and sharing and everything.
Okay. So,
we're
is
fine.
it a
It's
combination
getting
of having
better.
relationships at the government level to be able to
It's
push this through?
I think that every operator that wants to come in a city has to have really good relationships with the city, talk to the transportation authorities, because this is a whole, I mean, we're living in the same world and we're operating in the same city, and it has to be a really, really concerted operation. I mean, transportation, like today we have 10,000 rides a day, but maybe tomorrow it will be 50,000. So every one of us will become a very important actor in mobility in each city. So really you have to cope with the cities and accept regulation. It's very important.
So it's a good segue. We're almost wrapping up. We have a couple more minutes here, and then we'll wrap up. Question for you, Mar, which is, you work for an American company, and Bertrand brings up, the need for relationships at a local level for government purposes. How are American companies, as an American sitting here on the panel, how are American companies treated currently? I mean, you have one operational experience, but how does it differ for you versus maybe some of your other competitors?
Well, it appears that Scoot, because our founder and CEO, he's an urban planner, so from the beginning the spirit was to collaborate with the cities to make them better. So then at Scoot, from the first day in San Francisco, we established relationships with the city hall. So we worked together very closely in order to develop the first permit in North America for scooter sharing. So we had that mentality when coming to Barcelona, so that's why we have been speaking very closely to the city hall, to the regulators, in order to make them aware that we were launching and that we want to collaborate with them and to follow the guidelines. So this is our spirit as well when we go to other cities. So I think, like, even though we're an American company, in that kind, we're a special one, because we are actually, if you see now the news, in San Francisco, there are many issues with regulations, except for us, because Scoot is working closely with the City Hall.
Okay. So it sounds like the necessity to be very close is the apparent need across all of the EU. Any more questions out there in the gallery? All right. Well, please, everyone, give these gentlemen and lady a warm round of applause for joining us today.